Well, good evening. Welcome to the last tackle here on the Sportsman Rugby League. The hourglass is emptying on the 2023 season. Still all to play for. Alongside me this week, Kyle Amor and Danika Priim. And there's only one place to start, and that is at the bottom of the Betfred Super League. A huge game between Casty and Wakefield going into it for all sorts of reasons, but most obviously because whoever won that game took a massive step towards safety, and it was Casty that did it.
Yeah, and credit to them for that. We spoke early off air about the chances that Wakefield, some of the calls that didn't quite go their way early on in the game. But look, you have to ride that, and you have to find a way of getting on top in those games. And unfortunately for Wakefield, they weren't able to do that. And obviously, there was a decent crowd there at home. I did a podcast yesterday with Andrew Fafita. He was there watching his brother play his 150th game, and he spoke about the atmosphere there. And I know from my playing days there that once that crowd gets on top of you, it's an incredible place to play. But it was Casty Tigers that came out on top, and again, credit to them because it must have been a high pressure game.
I actually thought, Danika, that if Wakefield had put that performance in 10 weeks ago, they'd have seen it as all right, because there was, in terms of the progress that they'd made, because they were banging the game. It was to and fro for quite a bit. But they're running out of weeks, aren't they, to get this done if they're going to?
That was it. It was a seesaw game, wasn't it? It was a real one-up, either side. And I think you've got to look at the emotion that Wakefield put into that. You try to forget about that, but there's a lot of pressure on them to perform. But like you said, we've seen Wakefield give performances this season that have shocked us and surprised us. It wasn't a bad performance by any chance. It was just that Casty took the opportunities and capitalised on them better, and especially towards the end of the second half with, Greg Eden and that corner just seemed to be finding that gap every single time.
I think Wakefield's biggest bugbear when they look back on this season is I can't remember a side starting the season as bad as what they did. They were racking in 40s, 50s, 60s even on some occasions, and I don't think they scored for something like 5 or 6 weeks. And you can't really start a season like that and then complain about towards the back end of the year where you are. They have improved. They have done some decent performances, turned over some decent sides as well. But you're right, time is running out. There's five games left. 10 points is still available, so there's a chance. But again, it's getting now where it's every game for them and for Castleford is a grand final.
From a Casty perspective, though, they've got the 2 points and put themselves in pole position. I don't really feel like the pressure's lifted for them. It feels like a game they had to win. But I don't the complexion's not changed, has it, for what they need to do? No,
and if you listen to some of the people that have spoken about it, the players and the staff, and obviously Danny Ward going in there, culturally he might have changed something, but whatever's on the field, too little too late this season, and maybe going forward, depending on what they choose to do and who they choose to go with, could be a different thing. And all that Danny Ward can do is kind of slightly pick at details and maybe make the backside, the backside story kind of be a little bit more together. But they've got 5 really tough games. Like next week is, this weekend is a huge ask for them, and all it takes is for them to lose a couple, for Wakefield to draw the scoreline. And like Kyle said, Wakefield are struggling because the points difference, points for and against is so big. But I think it's going to be a tougher 5 weeks for Casty than it is for Wakefield.
Yeah, but they have managed to narrow that points for and against, which it may come down to. They have narrowed it now to, where if they were to win by a couple of tries and Casty were to lose by a couple of tries, well, we're almost locked in at a stalemate again. So, ultimately, the side that wants it that little bit more will find a way. And in what has been a shocking season for both Castleford Tigers and Wakefield, the story's still yet to be written.
And from a neutral perspective, this is really interesting because we're kind of in uncharted territory here, because if you look at what's gone on previously, Toulouse had a little bit of a resurgence of points last year, never really made it that competitive. The year before that, Lee were cut adrift quite early on. The year before that, obviously, Toronto dropped out. We've not had a shootout like this for a while between two teams. Well,
look, let's be fair. Start of the season, Lee Leopards, everyone was like, not a chance. So we didn't even think about Wakefield and Casty. That wasn't even part of it. And then Wakefield did start with that downward spiral, and straight away after week 5, week 6, we're saying, look, Wakefield are going to struggle. Casty were kind of dipping and switching, and now as it's come to the middle and then towards the end, it is that it's squeaky bum time, for want of a better phrase, isn't it, for either of them? And that makes it more exciting for us as neutrals to see, because, yeah, the top 6 might be the interesting part. The top 3 probably decided, but I want to know who's going to come out on top, or at bottom, should I say, when it gets to those 2.
I remember being sat either in one of these 2 chairs and doing this right at the very start of the season, and I actually felt that I'd seen enough of the Championship and I liked how Lee recruited. I remember calling them around about 9th, and I said from day one that I thought Castleford Tigers would be in trouble. I thought they'd be in trouble because the squad was too old. I didn't think they had enough quality within their side to stay up, so I still think, call me a bit mad, I still think Castleford will go down.
You've heard it here first.
Well, I'm not throwing that one out, but I still think Castle will go down, I really do.
Yeah, it's fascinating at the bottom. It's fascinating right across the league, isn't it? One of the other games from Friday, Salford boosted their playoff hopes against Huddersfield. It's a really interesting thing, this playoff race.
Yeah.
Salford kind of back in it. Are they now? Is that a win that almost sets them up for a run-in?
Of course. And as a Salford fan, you'll be licking your lips at that. So no, look. I think what you've said is exactly right. We've got at the bottom of the table, we don't know which way it's going to go. We've now got the playoffs, which we still don't know which way that's going to go. I think it's safe to say that Catalan Dragons have firmly got one hand on that league leaders' shield. But even that could, the game of rugby league could sometimes throw up some crazy results. So I think for the first time in a long time, we look at this Super League table and we've just got excitement all over it. We don't know which way it's going to go. It's going to keep us gripped over the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks. And I can't wait. It's almost strap yourself in and enjoy the ride, really.
We've got footage that Kyle's going to be peppered with on social media if Cass stay up. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Danika. 4 points between 5th and 10th. Probably 2 places in that 6. Very much up for grabs. Who are your 2 to get into those 5th and 6th spots?
Right, I'm not going to make any wild statements, because Rugby League, this season particularly,
That's
I think
not as
has
fun
been...
as what Kyle just did with Cass.
I'm not as risky as Kyle. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to play my audience very carefully. That's why I like working with Kyle, because he takes the big leaps and I'll just teeter behind in his shadows. But Salford on form against Huddersfield, that they seem to be a lot more together again. I think they've lost the structure in recent weeks, and I think we actually saw them really perform again, which again makes Salford a little bit dangerous. Leeds Rhinos, are they going to teeter back up it, like doing what typical Leeds Rhinos do? And I'm cut me like a stick of rock and I say Leeds Rhinos, but are they going to do it again? Maybe. Do they deserve to? Probably not. But who can say? But I think that middle end is too difficult to call. I'm going to go comfortably with the top 3, but I'm going to sit on the fence and get a lot of splinters with the middle.
Does it almost feel like we're playing a game here of not who will make it in, but who will drop out?
I think
there's some teams doing their best to not make the 6. It feels like.
Do you know? And I think you can put Warrington Wolves in there. I think their drop off in form and obviously everything that's gone on. I think they're probably the team out of them all who would look like they're going to drop out. I still think, but I still actually think that if they get there, they have got the squad within there to 100% make a challenge at the back end of the season. But you have to go into playoffs with a bit of momentum behind you, and I feel that Warrington Wolves, out of those clubs that sit currently in the 6, they're the ones that are showing them, are very much showing that they're looking like the most likely that they're going to drop out of it. But I am with Danika on this one. I'm not as convinced around this top 6 part, who gets in, who gets out, because some of the teams in and around there are just throwing in some crazy performances, and then other teams are getting results where you perhaps wouldn't think they'd have got one, and it's so difficult, that part. I think it's much more difficult to call who gets in the 6 than who gets relegated.
But kind of working our way steadily up the table, and I think because of what's going on at the bottom and what's going on in that kind of middle bottom of the playoffs bracket, we're kind of ignoring the fact that Catalans are quietly putting together one of the great Super League campaigns almost, because they're comfortably at the top of the division now. They've not really looked... I still think they've got a gear or 2 left in them.
Well, absolutely. They're 4 points ahead. They physically cannot drop out of the top 6 now. So they're comfortably in it. And I think it's a real shame for Catalan, because we've really not ignored them, but they've not had the plaudits that maybe Saints team would have done, or Lee Leopards have had. Getting the Challenge Cup. Are we going to see Lee drop off form because of a Challenge Cup win? Facing that Catalan side, they looked classy, did Catalan. You know, they put in the hard yards because they do the travelling. You know, they have to fix up. Mitchell Pearce at the weekend I thought was just phenomenal, and that's what led the game for Catalan. And what if he gets injured? God forbid, you know, touch wood, that doesn't happen. But if Catalan got a couple of dodgy injuries, would that make them suffer?
And well, I think injuries, Danica, are part and parcel of the game. We know that, don't we? We know that the side that genuinely goes on to be in a grand final or win the grand final generally has the best 1 to 30, not just the 1 to 17. Yeah. So injuries do throw themselves. You know, you can look across every club, and every club would have had their injuries. Warrington had them, Leeds have had them, St Helens have had them.
But I think that's the only way that Catalan will drop in form.
You know,
losing a few.
No, look, I agree. But whether it's because they are based in France or whether it's because, you know, for whatever reason, Danica's right. We've not really. They've almost just been there, you know. They've just been there, but they've been in the top 1 or 2 for pretty much most of the year. But nobody's ever really acknowledged them and sort of and pumped the tyres up.
Yeah.
There's always been another story, isn't there? Because it was Warrington throwing it away when they got into that.
That's been perfect for Catalan. If I'm a Catalan player sat in that room, I'm going, this is gold, because nobody's talking about us. Nobody's putting expectation. There's weirdly no pressure. It's exactly right, you know. And I just think that their playing roster is fantastic. And look, you know, I think they go on. I don't think they drop in form. I think they win the League Leaders' Shield. But the playoffs, there's teams within that playoffs who just know how to get it right. And Catalan showed us a couple of years back. 2021 grand final against Saints, you know, that game, you know, went right to the wire, you know, it really did. And, you know, thankfully for our side, when we were at Saints, it was us that ended up lifting the trophy. But, you know, is this the year of the Dragon? I don't know.
There was a sense that night, or I certainly had a sense that night, even though you guys won on the night, that it wasn't a flash in the pan. Catalans would be back. They've been thereabouts since. You'd say they're absolute front runners at this point purely because of league table. Just across the league, some of these results: Wigan 13, Hull FC 12, Golden Point, which is again great for the neutral, love it. But if I was a Hull FC or a Wigan fan, you just feel like every game at the moment, Carl's an absolute tombola because the performances, the results, it's just different every week.
Well, that's what I was talking about. You know, in that top 6, apart from really Catalan, every team, you know, they've really struggled to put a run of 3, 4, 5 games together. You know, there's like an anomaly result that jumps out. And I'm not saying, look, Wigan got the win and everyone will move on from that. They've got the 2 points, it's job done. But internally, they'll be a little bit concerned with how they've been performing, you know. And maybe it was one of those games where, let's credit Hull FC, they threw everything at them. You know, there's always 2 sides to every story. But at this stage of the season, you ask any coach, are they going to look back in 5 weeks' time? Let's say Salford get in by 2 points. Are they going to look back at a performance 5 weeks earlier where they just scraped the win? No. Do you know what I mean? You've just got to get your wins at the moment however that looks.
But to counteract that, and I'd hate to put the pressure on one player because I'm a prop. I did nothing. I caught and I ran. I got tackled. That was my job. Harry Smith, I could arguably say missed 10 points and then missed 2 drop goals. Missed a drop goal before it went to Golden Point. Missed 2 in Golden Point. I finally got it, but his kicking has probably led the fact to Wigan have scraped wins. He could have, and it's unfair to say, is it down to him? Like, is that fair to say that? But at the weekend, he missed a couple of crucial kicks which made it go to Golden Point.
That's been something that's hindered Wigan all season. You know, that's just, you know.
Playoff games, he's got the pressure, is he going to make it?
You know, he's putting his hand up, he's the one who's taking the kicks. Have Wigan got a second backup kicker? I don't know. But he's the one that's taking that mantle on. Yes, he doesn't mean to miss them on purpose, but he's kicking. Come the big games, you know, converting those 4s into 6s is massive. You know, it really is. And you know, so often you look at big games, usually the first points within those tend to be a penalty. Do you know what I mean? They tend to be sort of, you know, those really tight games. So, yeah, you know, like I said, that's been a concern of not only Harry Smith's but of Wigan for some time now.
But I think it's worked well for Saints. You know, Tommy Makinson's now not got the pressure. Mark Percival's back in. They've paired them 2 up. You know, he's off the kicking duties now, and he seems to be enjoying and playing a lot more, like back to his, you know, try scoring down the wing. He's concentrating on one thing, and that's mixed it up, which has benefited Saints.
But even, you know, you think back to the Challenge Cup semi-final, Tommy Makinson missing a kick there. Yeah. You know, crucial kicks.
A lot of pressure though, like having that thing on you.
Massive, isn't it?
Oh, it's massive. You know, Lachlan Coote, when he was at St Helens and at OKR, you know, you could almost just, you know, if a penalty got given, you could start walking back to your line because you knew pretty much more often than not his succession rate was pretty high. And I think it's perhaps a bit of an undersold skill in our game, really. You know.
Well, the amount of golden points this year,
Yeah.
and the amount of how tight games have been, it does come down to a decent kicker.
It's kind of led us on to St Helens nicely, and we're talking about not talking about Catalans and them going under the radar a little bit. It's almost been the opposite for St Helens, but I'd argue, Kyle, you're probably pretty well placed to comment on this, that Saints have really only been disappointed by their own standards.
Yes.
Like, only because of what they've done
Yeah.
for the last 3 years,
Yeah.
4 years. Are we looking at Saints and going, oh, there's something not right?
Yeah, I think you can even throw 5 years in there. I think 2018, you know, when they crashed out in the playoffs at Warrington, they played incredibly well all year as well in that year. So I think for 5 years, you know, everyone pretty much accepts that they have been the benchmark of the season. But this is a sport where traditionally a player's career would maybe only last 15 years. So you're talking about a third of a player's career, aside being that dominant. It takes an awful lot out of you. I still think, and again, my quotes are everywhere here. No, I still think that St Helens, get them into the playoffs. They have the squad. Every team in the competition, I think, would be frightened to play St Helens. You know, I do. I think if they get all the players right and the key personnel right, they have a chance to pulling out that World Club Challenge performance again, which is probably the greatest performance in the club's history. I think they're quietly sort of, you know, starting to. I think that they've put 4 wins together in a row now, and they're going to sort of head towards the back end of this season with a little bit of momentum behind them. So, but yeah, I do agree. I think their standards, when they have dropped, have led to them performances, and that's what's difficult about being a player in a place like St Helens. The moment you look like you've shown vulnerability, not only does the town and the fans what they expect, but I think, you know, the media and the rest of the competition almost enjoy that because of the dominance over the last 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, just utterly breathless this season. I can't quite believe we're as close to playoffs as we are. We'll come back onto the Betfred, the Men's Super League shortly, but loads of Rugby League across the weekend, across the game. And of course, we crowned another Challenge Cup winner this weekend. This time, it was the turn of the wheelchair competition.
But just not be able to make it. A little bit of a mistake gives Catalan now.
A chance, and here is a chance, and they are going to weave their way through, and they have scored. It's Vargas with a try. Weaved his way through, and Leeds' first real test of their defence, and they've come up short. It's the Dragons who strike first, and it's Arno Vargas with a try. Dragons lead 4-0. And Halliwell now starting to get more involved. Butler is quick. Butler sidesteps, he's still going. Butler, what a bit of evasion. Josh Butler's got defenders turned away from him. Eventually he's tackled. Clarcel throws him to the ground on the last one. But that was mesmerising skill from Butler. Here comes Halliwell now. Halliwell, is he going to put the kick in? No, not on this occasion, he's not. Now he does. Butler collects. Oh, what a pass! What a pass! Collins will score under the post. Leeds, sensational rugby league.
The key between the two.
Yeah, it has. Here's Gilles Clarcel again, breaking the Leeds line. Got support with him. He thought about kicking, flicks it to Bashara, catches it behind his head, and he's over for his second try. Champagne stuff from the Catalan Dragons. Gilles Clarcel again at the heart of it. He puts Bashara. He just poses for a picture before he makes his way over to his Catalan Dragons teammates. Let the party begin. For the first time, the Catalan Dragons are the 2023 Betfred Wheelchair Challenge Cup winners. The Catalan Dragons have done it. Winners at last.
Yeah, congratulations to Catalan Dragons, Betfred Wheelchair Challenge Cup winners 2023. Danika, we just heard you on the coverage there. It looked like another mega wheelchair event in Sheffield.
Yeah, it was awesome. And to, you know, come off the back of the World Cup and how fantastic the wheelchair did there. The turnout was great, the spectator was great, the interest was fantastic. And credit to Catalan, they've tried for 4 years to get that trophy off Leeds, and finally they did it. And they truly were the better team on the day. I think Seb Bashar and Jamie Borson, who are both dual reg with Halifax as well, a lot of research, a lot of homework had gone into. They completely cut out Tom Halliwell and Nathan Collins of Leeds, so the boys had nothing to go with. James Simpson obviously has come out and now a coach, and you could see him pacing up and down the sideline, desperate to get back in his chair. But massive credit to Catalan. They'd done the research, they'd done the work, and the point score showed it. They were the better team by far.
And then more silverware from the Betfred Women's Super League on this occasion. York Valkyrie claiming League Leaders Shield second year in a row. They're a very good rugby league team, aren't they, at this point?
The stuff they've done in that at York has been fantastic. They're building from the academy, and they're bringing through some real superstars. They're in York, so they're the only team nearby for the young girls to come through. Really gutted for them to not make the Challenge Cup final and to really kind of go for the treble this year. But credit where it's due. They've gone unbeaten. They've had one draw and the rest have been wins. They're building a really good squad. They've got a few good players there that are going to be in contention to get the Woman of Steel nominations at the end of the year in Tara Stanley and Sinead Peach. It's littered with England internationals, and I think, that grand final spot is really up there for them to get as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say off the back of that, I mean, obviously I've done covered quite a bit of the women's game myself, and I just feel that York, whilst they have been improving, Lindsay Anfield's brought in some good players, developed other young players as well. They just seem to lack that little bit between the teeth in big pressure games, don't they? You think back to last year's grand final, you think about the Challenge Cup semi-final against St Helens. Yes, they have shown that over a 2-year period they are the most consistent side, and that is something that, weirdly enough in our sport, it's crazy, isn't it? The League Leaders Shield is the hardest trophy to win. If you actually think about it, you've got to beat every team.
About least.
Yeah, exactly. But there's not a one-off game pressure moment in that trophy, is there? And I think the learn is for the York Valkyrie side is that they've lost the they've lost the grand final, they've lost the semi-final in a Challenge Cup. Maybe third time lucky. You have to lose before you have to win. That's what they say in finals. You've got to lose one before you win one. Well, now they've lost the grand final, a semi-final in a Challenge Cup, real clutch, pressure games. If they get to the grand final, I don't see them this year letting that one go. I don't. I think they learn the lessons from that.
And I think the way the playoffs of the women work, we're looking at first versus fourth, which is potentially Wigan at the minute. I don't see Wigan catching Saints or Leeds, so...
Wigan have been better this year, though, Danika, haven't they? They have been
a
lot better, and that's a big plus for the women's game. Once upon a time, there was only 2 teams, then now there's 3 teams who are genuinely competitive. Bringing them
3.5.
Well, 3.5. With hopefully next year it gets to 4, and then that's how we start building it from there, really.
But I reckon you'll see York in the final.
The thing that excites me about it, Danika, is that Old Trafford's amazing, has been for years. Love it, but I mean, all 3 of us have first-hand experience of covering the wheelchair game and the women's game, commentary and doing shows like this and that kind of thing. We see it week in, week out, but I'm genuinely excited about that weekend in October where you've got your men's grand final, your wheelchair grand final, and your women's in and around that time as well. It's becoming the kind of thing, we talk about Magic Weekend and Challenge Cup final, that it's just amplified what that time of year in October is now for me.
Yeah, massive, and I've got to look back at Wembley and what the occasion was, and like Kyle said, he's been involved in the game, he's seen the progress of the game, and to have a final, that double header, the whole weekend be an event for the women's game just shows how far it's come. I think 10 minutes into the second half, there's 8,500 spectators there, and granted, a lot of them would have come for the men's game, but they came early and sat and took in the game, which is what we want. And we're not expecting people to just click their fingers and appreciate the women's game. We need occasions like that in order to increase our spectators, for them to go, actually, it is different. It is a different entity, but it's still rugby league and there's still an entertainment value to it. Maybe not, it's a little bit different to the men, but this is just proof that we are getting people in there to watch it. And so having occasions like big weekends for the sport, which celebrate all elements of it, is best for the wheelchair and the women's to make it grow.
Yeah, I agree, Danica, 100%. I think one of the lasting images I had from the Rugby League World Cup was the final where you had the women's winners, you had the wheelchair, and you had the men's all on one field. And I thought that just sort of encompassed everything that was pretty special about our game.
Yeah.
How it is, the most sort of diverse and inclusive sport on the planet for across those 3 different games. And I just think the more weekends we can have that, and the more we can drive that, the more of a sort of a celebration, a carnival, if you like, of the game that we all love, that we can watch every single one of them.
Yeah. Well, we've brought you live games from right across the sport here on the Sportsman Rugby League this season, from the Challenge Cup, the women's game, the wheelchair, League One as well. Keep your eyes peeled because we'll have confirmation of our live coverage for the end of the year very, very soon.
You're watching the Sportsman Rugby League,
the home of Rugby League online.
Subscribe for exclusive live games from the Betfred Women's Super League and Challenge Cup.
Right, let's turn our attention back to the men's Betfred Super League then. It kicks off Friday night. Hull KR Lee Leopards, of course, a rematch of that Challenge Cup final. Will that have any bearing on it at all?
Yes, without absolutely, without doubt. Usually the side, we talked about Hull KR and how they performed against St Helens. 30 minutes in, that was a deadlock. Usually the side that loses a Challenge Cup final, there's normally a reaction, and that's probably what you saw there, albeit that the game ended up getting away from them. Lee, however, they surprised me given how close the scoreline was at half-time. Of course, Catalan then blew them away. It's such a difficult and emotional week to back up after. However, this side, this is almost the perfect game for Hull KR to go back in and try and get their claim for the playoffs. Danika mentioned about how Lee Leopards, are they going to fall off a cliff? So many sides beforehand who got the hands on that famous trophy have struggled historically towards the back end of the year. This is going to be a very tough one to call, a very, very tough one. Are you asking me for an answer now?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Get straight out there.
Right, I'm going to go Hull KR. I'm going to go Hull KR win this one, and it'll be that home crowd that helped them do that as well.
Oh, there's no more difficult place to go than Craven Park. Obviously, Kyle, you would have played there quite a few times. The away changing rooms are oppressive and dark, and they've even painted the top half now red, so it's even darker, even closer. Not that a changing room makes a difference, but it is a difficult place to go. The Hull KR fans turn out in their numbers, and look, who doesn't want to get one back on them? I back Lee. I think Lee have been absolutely fantastic. Maybe I'm a secret Lee Leopards fan. I've got my bucket hat from Derek Beaumont, so I wear it with pride. But I think this is a game, and Hull KR, when they're on their day, are going to take it definitely at Craven Park.
This next game is a really interesting one for reasons that we touched on earlier. Salford Red Devils against Wakefield. Salford obviously needing those 2 points to keep themselves in that playoff chat. Wakefield now, the ice ever thinning underneath them. How do you see this one panning out?
I think this is the best option for Wakefield. They're not playing too high up, in the table. So it's Salford are just getting back on form. So can Wakefield capitalise on that? We've seen Wakefield put on performances this season that shock and surprise. They're going away to Salford, which is obviously never the easier kind of draw. But I think Wakefield are going to have a little bit of renewed vigour. They were very close on Thursday. They nearly edged it. They're going to be a little bit upset from that, and they're going to right some wrongs. And I think I'm going to back Wakefield to do it. Kyle,
give me your prediction for that game, and then tell me what happens at Cass.
I'm going to go Salford. I think Salford have enough in that game I think the way they play, the way they move the ball around, I think it'll be too much for Wakefield. St Helens Cass, this will be a very, very quick one. It's obviously no surprise, St Helens. I think they've got a little bit of momentum behind them. Again, Danika talked about Hull KR being a difficult place. Well, the jungle is right up there as well. It was one of the grounds I used to love playing at. It was very hostile, very much on you. And again, I think the crowd are going to have to help this Castleford Tigers side in those moments. If Cass are able to sort of contain and give a start, a fast start, and maybe get a jump on St Helens, then maybe they can have a little bit of joy and success in periods in the game. But I think overall, the course of 80 minutes, St Helens get the job done there.
Hull FC, Warrington, two teams. We spoke about teams doing their best to drop out of the playoffs.
Hull FC for me. They're a team that are teetering on that middle ground out there a little bit and can go either way. But I think the form that Warrington are they've lost momentum. So for me, it's definitely a Hull FC win this weekend.
I think Hull FC have to win. I think if they lose, then you're talking potentially 4 points away with only 4 games left. I think Hull FC have to win. I tell you what, there's some good games, isn't there? Here,
Yeah.
That's the hard part, But you put me on the spot, My head's actually saying Warrington here, right? But I'm thinking about what I said earlier, and I'm thinking about the form that Warrington have been in. I'm going to back an FC win.
Catalan Wigan's done.
Catalan, without a shadow of a doubt. We're going to travel in. We're going to, they're doing it, but they're not doing it in the easiest of fashions. But Catalan are just too on form, and we keep forgetting about them. Catalan's at home, easy win.
Yeah, I'm going to go Wigan. I think historically Catalan and Wigan I think Wigan sort of do struggle against Catalan, actually. They've lost quite a number of games, but not always been blowout scores, and I just think it's one of them that this is going to be a result that where everybody would think it would be Catalan Dragon because of the travel, because of how well they're playing. I think this might... Look, Catalan have got 4 points on everybody else. I'm not saying that they're going to become complacent, I'm really not, but I think Wigan, if they're wanting to chase down that league leaders' shield, again, they have to win this game. If they don't win this game, and Catalan do, then I'd almost say that Catalan have got 2 hands on that league leaders' shield. You know, I'd be that confident. Maybe just one finger off it. I don't know. But I think Wigan maybe just upset the trend here.
It rounds off with Huddersfield versus Leeds, 2 teams who are running out of Jenga blocks, but they're just about still standing. Danika, what happens here?
Do you know what? If I take everything off, I'm just a Leeds Rhinos fan. It's a headache. It's painful because I think after this weekend, we should be like absolutely fine that's going in. But that means nothing for the Leeds Rhinos side at the minute. There's no momentum. They're juggling. They're up and down, roller coaster riding it. However, I'll never go against a Leeds Rhinos win.
Carl?
Huddersfield home advantage. I think this is where we.
Look, I
think this is where.
Noise was enough. That prediction in itself.
I think this is where we're at with these games. Like, because of right at the start of the whole show, we spoke about like how tight and congested it. Well, each one of these fixtures is pretty much, you've got first against second, you've got all those others that are in and around fighting for that playoff. It's just so difficult to call. So I'm just going to go home advantage, Huddersfield. That's the only reason I can think of, because it wouldn't surprise me which team won.
Right. 6 unbelievable games again. We've just sat on the fence mostly there, haven't we? We've tried to make some predictions. Ultimately, we've no idea what we're doing. And just before we wrap up, some news out yesterday. Broadcast deal. Rugby League Commercial are entering a 30-day negotiation period with Sky to thrash out what the next broadcast deal looks like. So still obviously loads of details to come. What is in that proposal is a commitment to provide live coverage of all 6 games and video refs at every Super League game. So obviously a lot still to come out and pick apart, but ultimately that's good news.
I think it's fantastic. You know, I think you look at the NRL and the availability they have and the accessibility they have right across all their games. I think the big one for, we're talking about elite level performance and we're talking about a game of inches. Well, you have to have video referees at every one of those games, because we all know as fans and as players of the game and certain clubs we're at, there's been times where we've, the way football's gone now, there's almost a definitive goal or no goal. On Sky, there's almost a definitive try. Not even that sometimes gets a bit of controversy in there. But, for the rest of the competition, it's so important that everybody's on that fair playing field. I think it's huge. I think it's huge for the game. And, I'm just, as a fan, I think what a time to be involved in rugby league.
Yeah, I think, like Carl said, I think there's a lot of teams this year said, what if? Had we had this referee? Had we not? However, back to the same thing as Kyle. You're a fan of the game. You've got opportunities to watch all 6 games every weekend. It's a deal not to be missed there.
More rugby league, 6 live games a week. Oh, it's good news for you two. Your accountants will be rubbing your hands together. You're never off telly as it is.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you both for joining us. We've got through a lot there. There's a huge amount of action at the weekend just gone. A huge amount of action coming. We keep mentioning it, but we are in the home stretch. Old Trafford, those grand finals. Looming large. I can't wait. We're going to be with you every step of the way here on The Sportsman. As I mentioned earlier, keep your eyes peeled. We'll have some live game announcements very shortly. And of course, we will see you next week right here on The Last Tackle.